north.
Hey boys, so I just had a thought. This is for you guys who are nerds like me, who are into like sci-fi. I don't know if you guys are gamers.
Speed check reported ahead.
A lot of what you guys watch, if you guys played Mass Effect, or you played any science fiction games. Specifically, I want to talk about Star Wars and how it relates to your masculine journey. For instance, let's think of it this way. So the story of Anakin is actually the story, we can relate this so heavily to our world. So Anakin, in the first three movies, now we can argue these movies are bad or whatever, but honestly, the message is very powerful. And I wish people could really think about, like, a lot of the people who watch these movies, like you see a guy with a Star Wars shirt, and you immediately cringe. I was one of those guys, one of those kids who had the Star Wars shirt. It was pretty cringe, and I looked like a little pussy with my skinny ass arms, But let's talk about the fact that Anakin is kind of an example of what women and being like having women, like obsessing about women, can consume you. It's literally a story of a guy who simped so hard that he betrayed everyone. He betrayed all his friends. He was kind of a psychopath, and you could say that Palpatine was manipulated from the beginning, and he was pretty much created by Palpatine as a way for the dark side, for him to defeat the Jedi. The Jedi had also become very weak. We need to understand that this story can relate to our situation in the West so well. The Jedi were like, peacekeepers basically, and they had defeated the Sith, and they had a period of masculinity when they were strong, and they were defeating, they completely wrecked the Sith. Like the Sith, there was no Sith lords. Sith were, I would consider, okay, let's put it this way. I'd say Jedi were more like the kind of the nice guys of the galaxy. Let's put it this way. Like, they were kind of like nice guys, basically. It was like an order of like ultra white knights, almost, I guess. They were kind of like white knights. And then the let's look at the Sith Lords. Now, the Sith Lords were kind of like Andrew Tate. Like Andrew Tate, I don't think he's probably doesn't even like Star Wars. He hasn't seen the movie, but I think Andrew Tate would count as like, maybe like a Sith Lord. That's nothing against him. The Sith Lords were very successful and they were powerful, but they were, in the end, they were evil and prideful, and they don't have really much control of their emotions. Where the most masculine characters you see in Star Wars are Yoda. Literally Yoda. Dude, Yoda is like 3'10". But he is so fast and so badass. He doesn't need a woman. You don't ever see Yoda with a woman. Yoda is never simped. Yoda never simps for anybody. And he's like the wisest character. Now, we could argue, there's a lot of people who argue that the Jedi are evil, and all that. And I'm going to actually disagree with that. The Jedi were not evil. They were misguided. And they didn't educate, and they didn't guide Anakin in the way that he needed. So he looked for a masculine guide. We can see this happening literally with men who are on the red pill. Everybody's looking at Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate, you could put him as Palpatine. Let's just say that Anakin represents all the lonely young men that are struggling these days, trying to get women, struggling to get their status, struggling to get noticed, or really invisible, really. And put Anakin, Anakin, even though he does get a woman, Anakin does marry, he marries the girl, but that's why I think there's some conspiracies, and there's a lot of people thinking that, maybe that would be crazy if, if Padme actually cheated with, that would just make the story make sense, because his master is clearly way more masculine than him. He's a pussy. Like, Anakin is actually a little bitch. That's the funniest thing. He's so feminine, if you think about it. Like, he's so effeminate. Like, he's overly emotional. He doesn't have control of his emotions at all. He's so powerful. He's extremely powerful, but he has no masculine guide. And Obi-Wan doesn't guide him in the right direction, even though he's clearly the more masculine guy, and he's trying to help him, but he just doesn't understand that, like, that he's not guiding him, he's not respecting him, he's not teaching him the right things to keep him more loyal to the thing. And then in the end, these people don't guide him. They see this guy, they see him as a problem, They see them as, and that's the way society looks at men.
Speed check reported ahead.
That, you could easily relate this to the way that society is looking at young men. The way that men are just, and including myself, like, are not guided in the right direction. Or in relation to anything, like in relation to women, in relation to this. And we're getting slowly sucked into being guided by masculine, so-called masculine teachers that are teaching us, yes, a way of being more masculine, but they're teaching us like a more toxic way of being masculine. Like they're teaching us like the evil side of masculinity. Instead of like, I'm not talking like in my opinion, like the Jedi were misguided, and like I said, they were becoming like nice guys. They were like pussies. Like a lot of them were teaching things that were not making much sense, and but they taught about celibacy. Celibacy was actually a big deal, and why you should have no connections. And I think they were kind of right. Honestly, they were kind of right, because like the whole fall of the order was because of Anakin. Anakin betrayed the teachings. And from the beginning, they said that they shouldn't have taken him. I think Qui-Gon Jinn, now that I look back at it, and when you mature past the resentful stage of life, the way I was, and you look at it now, like the way I look at this story now is from the perspective I'm now, and now as a 28-year-old man who's grown out of, that kind of adolescent stage, you realize how immature Anakin actually was. And that this story is a story about masculinity and the dangers of misguided men who are guided towards, who are just so addicted to their lusts. Anakin, you could literally attribute to a lot of the problems with Anakin is he's so lustful over Padme. And Padme loves him, and I think Padme's just naive. She doesn't really know that she's a danger. She doesn't know that she's the source of danger, you know what I mean? She loves him, like she's attracted to him, but not for the right reasons, because I think she's a little afraid of him because he's like psycho dude. Like literally he like threatens her, like he hits on her and he acts creepy, like he does creepy shit. Like he's like touching her back, like clearly like making moves like too soon. And I think they both had probably just never been with anybody. Like this is probably, like these are two virgins. These are clearly two virgins who've never been with anybody else. And they get into this toxic relationship.
In 2 miles,
Where
take
have we heard
exit
this
200
before?
on the right onto I-225 North.
Where have we heard this before? People don't, jumping into something too soon before they really know who each other are. And like, you got to realize these people are young. Like, I think in the story, I think they're supposed to be like 20 years old, maybe. Like, I don't know, but like they look at maybe 21, maybe a little younger. And then I don't know how long the Clone Wars last, but I know. You can like, let's aside all the technology and all the like force and all that. Like, let's put it. This is a very human story, and it's a story of it's a story of tragedy. It's a very good story, but it also has a life lesson in it. Believe it or not, it's like almost like a biblical lesson. It's also about the fall of empires and political stuffs, and like obviously political intrigue. It's very fascinating because it relates to our world so much. It's clearly based on like stuff like Romeo and Juliet and shit like that. But the story is about men who about the dangers, I think, of masculinity becoming in crisis, which is what is happening with Anakin. Like he's just so emotional, he's dangerous, he's violent, he's so resentful, he's angry, he just has no control emotionally, and that's what the Jedi see, but yet they take him in because based off of basically the mistake of Qui-Gon Jinn, who is the complete opposite, but he sees this potential because he was the chosen one. The problem is that he was created to be manipulated. His father was literally like, I guess you could say, like a neglectful father who we don't really understand. It's still kind of a mystery. I think it's left ambiguous, but he never has a father. Like, that's straight up, it's a fatherless household. He grows up as a slave. He is invisible throughout his life. He meets a girl finally, probably like Padme was like, it was like, it'd be like meeting like the princess, like you meet this princess and it's like,
take exit 200 on the right onto I-225
First thing he does,
North.
he falls in love with it when he's a kid, so that grows. So then he leaves his house to join the Jedi Order. to join this, this elite kind of like
in 8.7 miles.
These
Take
knights
exit
that
9
have
onto
these
6th
values,
Avenue.
these vows of celibacy, and it's conflicting. You're just thrown into, and he's just thrown into it. He kind of chooses to join, so it's not completely the Jedi Order's fault, but they don't guide him the right direction. This is like the problem, and this is the problem going on in society. This is the problem. Everyone is becoming effeminate. And I don't know if feminism is a thing in this thing, but there isn't. Let's face it. I don't think when these movies were made there was as much feminism as there is now, thankfully. So that's why the story is better, because there wasn't like female characters shoved in there. And there's some female characters, but they're, Padme is more of a grounded female character. She's still extremely feminine, and she doesn't try to outdo the men. She's there and she's protected, but she's still pretty strong on her own, and she can still fight. And it's not like, but there's no like, I'm better, I need to be better than all the men, like, which is what a lot of these movies nowadays are. So anyway, I've gone on a tangent there, but the fascinating thing is about this can teach us about our masculinity and what the dangers of this crisis. If we don't try to teach ourselves the right lessons, we will end up like Anakin. Anakin basically is a school shooter, if you think about it. He's basically a school shooter. He wasn't popular. He got bullied by the other Jedi. He was lonely, and then he had one girlfriend. His friends, like all of his masculine teachers completely abandoned him. Society abandoned him. The entire order abandoned him. And they could have won, and they could have avoided being, massacred if they had just, embraced him, really, if they just welcomed him, like, into the village. And like I said, there's a saying that this can attribute to a lot of what's going on with men. Like, a lot of men are becoming Anakins, are becoming resentful and over-emotional pussies who don't get any. I mean, the difference is that the weird thing is he's getting laid, which he was getting laid, but I think this is also one of the reasons why he becomes so feminine, because he's like chained to Padme. Like, literally his entire thing is, I need to protect Padme, and that's why he turns to the dark side ultimately. Like, his love of pussy, it's the strangest thing. It's kind of funny, like a story that's stupid, that literally it's because he's so in love with this girl. He marries her like, in secret, but it's like literally a month after they, like, dude, is that really smart? Do they really know each other? No, they don't really know each other, and he can't be around her that much anyway, so the relationship was probably fucked. I mean, it's never really explained in the story whether she cheated with Obi-Wan, which she probably did. Think of that this way. Obi-Wan is like a Chad of the Jedi Temple. He is an absolute badass master swordsman. Dude has so much charisma. He can pick up any woman he wants. He's got the accent. He's got everything. Really, do you think that she was loyal to him when he's like around? Dude, that'd be crazy. I have a conspiracy theory. I think Luke Skywalker is actually Obi-Wan's son. And the kids don't even belong to Darth Vader. That would be the biggest tragedy in the story. The biggest tragedy. Imagine if the kids weren't even his, and he goes through all that. What if he was not their father? That would literally destroy the entire narrative, and it would change everything if that was true. I'm sure
use the left 3 lanes to keep left onto State Highway 83 North, then turn left.
This is a story about masculinity, and the reason that these stories are so popular with
at
men,
the light,
like
turn
Star
left
Wars,
onto South
Mass
Parker
Effect,
Road,
and Gears of War, and all these stories, they're very masculine. Have you noticed, like, we live in a society that's hostile towards masculinity, but the stories that, like, the reason the video games are successful, like a lot of these video games, Halo, Mass Effect, Gears of War, any shooter game, name any shooter game you everything is about being masculine, and everything is about actually fighting wars. Now, it is literally giving people the feeling of being masculine without them actually doing anything, and that's why it's dangerous. That's why it's so bad. How many gamers do you really play a video game because you feel lonely or bored or whatever? No, it's because it gives you this feeling of being in a combat, being a warrior, being a fighter. It's in our DNA to be like that. It's as big a drive in us as our
In
sex drive.
3.6 miles,
If not
turn
more.
right onto South Valencia Street.
It's one of the reasons that it's one of the major factors why we play video games, or why most men want to shoot guns. I don't think there's very, like, a lot of people will, oh no, I don't like to shoot guns. I'm a bitch. I'm a soy boy. I play some video games. I play Fortnite. It's like, I rest my case.